From Tally to Cali,
It's time
to wake up.
Wake up! Wake up!
Warchant.com is your ultimate Seminole sports source.
And this is Wake Up Warchant, presented by Corner Pocket Bar and Grill.
One ball, corner pocket.
Now here's Warchant.com's Aslan Hajavandi
And Corey Clark.
Wake up! What is up, everybody? It's Wake Up Warchant. It is presented by Corner Pocket Bar and Grill, Tallahassee, Florida. CPTallybar.com, the website. A fan favorite of everybody that's associated with this program, which is usually Corey Clark. He's out of pocket. He's doing well, though, everybody. He just wants you to know he's doing fine. Right, Ira, Tom? They're in the car with me. It's Wake Up Warchant, but it's with a twist. We were doing this in South Carolina en route to Charlotte, North Carolina for ACC Kickoff. And this is the first time I've ever done a show in South Carolina. Glad you guys are part of it. Ira, Tom, hi, guys.
Good, man. Just it's we're doing this for Corey. That's how I like to think of it. I feel a little heroic because we've got a man down, and Tom and I are going to step in, and we're not going to leave him behind. We're going to carry the day for Corey Clark.
That's what we do, man. I'm a backseat driver today, and I'll be the backseat driver to Wake Up Warchant. But sometimes it's all about the ride. It's not about where you sit. It's about just being on the ride together, and that's what we're doing right now.
We're all in a car. None of us are looking at each other. It's really weird. Ira's looking at the road. I'm looking at the box that we're talking into, and Tom's back there just grinding away.
Looking at a bus right now.
Yeah, so fun times. All right, we got plenty to talk about. We got some number changes, weight changes on the roster that's been released. Maybe some things we're looking forward to at ACC Kickoff coming up here later on this Wednesday as you're listening to this program, and just anything else crazy in the world of college football, expansion, et cetera, et cetera. Tom, shout out to you for doing the accounting on this. The updated media guide has dropped for Florida State in the 2022 season. And the first thing that we look for, obviously, are number changes, which a couple of them. You can check it on the website. Kevin Noles is number 3 now. Trey Benson's number 3 as well. Who took number 1? I forgot. Somebody
Winston
took number
Wright.
Winston Wright. Thank you, Tom. And then Jarrett Jackson, I think, went to 12. But body composition. The winner is our guy, Alex Mastromana, but nobody wants to talk about a punter because people think that punters don't have feelings. Since the spring prospectus was released, Ira, I think he gained 15, 16,
17 pounds. Do you think it's good weight? Do you think when an Australian punter puts on 17 pounds in the offseason, are we feeling good about it?
Absolutely.
That it's all muscle?
Absolutely, right? Come on, Tom.
So Australian weight's better than, say, Polish weight, maybe? Is it a Jano 17 or is it an Aussie 17? Yeah.
Lots of guys that to keep an eye on. The barometer that we set, our own Irish FL sets, pretty much let's look at the roster and see anybody that's either gained or lost more than 5 pounds. So anybody on this list that I don't have in front of you right now, Tom, but it's in my hand right now in my phone. I mean, there's 24 guys that have either put on 5 pounds or lost 5 pounds. Anybody kind of stand out to you when you help put this list together?
Yeah, I didn't realize that it would be nearly a third of the roster that we'd be looking at here. But I'll go with Caden Lyles first. He's down 6 pounds to 315. And that's an important one to me because health-wise in spring, I don't know if he was 100%. In fact, I think we can pretty confidently say he wasn't at 100%. So this tells me that he was able to commit into the weight and strength training program over the summer a little bit, and if he could be anything more than what the tape would suggest that Caden Lyles brings to the table, it would be to be more nimble. So maybe losing a few pounds allows him to be a little bit more nimble heading into that offensive line battle. There's a lot more, but you know me, guys. That's my assignment in camps is to take a look in the trenches, so that's where my eyes go first. But Caden Lyles a little bit lighter, not too bad.
Maurice Smith gained 17 pounds, Ira. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Holy cow, our guy must be at least 309 pounds now, right?
No, he is not. But he's getting closer to 290.
Yeah.
So that's a big step in the right direction. I was going to say that when Tom was talking about Caden Lyles, and yes, it's definitely a good sign that Caden Lyles is slimming down, but it's also a great sign that Maurice Smith is able to put on a few more pounds because, it was almost like he was going backwards. He was undersized last season, and then he came into the spring and he was on the roster at 271. Which I think was concerning to a lot of people that thought that he might be, if he's going to be your starting center, but now he's put on that weight. He's up closer to 290. Maybe he gets into camp at, 291, 292, and we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I mean, the line positions, gaining 5 pounds is probably a lot to ask, or losing 5 pounds at some of the smaller skill position guys. I feel like linemen, it probably happens pretty quickly. So it's a different metric, I think, if you're on the line.
Right. fine. Everything's relative. But to that point, though, how about Robert Scott gaining 19 pounds at 334? I mean, I don't know, what is he listed at, 6'5" or so, maybe 6'4"? I mean, that's, again, there's some mocks that have him going really high in the NFL draft. We'll see how that goes out. It's something I do want to ask maybe Mike Norvell later today when we get to speak to him at ACC Kickoff. Maybe somebody will ask him about that. But, I mean, 19 pounds right there, 334-pound, 6'5" left tackle. Maybe we've had somebody of that stature recently, Tom, but it feels like they probably haven't lived up to. But I'm pretty optimistic Robert Scott will be able to fulfill and at least, look like Tarzan, play somewhat close like Tarzan.
Yeah, that's the question I have. Is the 19 pounds concerned me a little bit because I hope the agility stays true. That's something I'm looking forward to seeing once they put pads on to see how quick he is. That's a giant number, though. I mean, it doesn't matter what position. If you're a freshman trying to lose 19 because you come in woefully overweight, or you're somebody who's entering their upperclassmen years who is putting on their man weight, 19 is a giant number. So I do want to see, what does that look like? Is it a giant gut that Robert's carrying around? Is it that he's put on a ton of strength? But there's a huge amount of movement in the trenches. So this is something that we always look at and we talk about. And Aslan, you did a video on it last year featuring the strength and conditioning program. I mean, look at the amount of change just across the board here for this roster. That center battle we talked about earlier, 23 pounds of difference and all for the good. And at left tackle, Robert Scott I think that's the lead. Outside of maybe the quarterback, I think that's the lead with the biggest change.
Again, these are changes, transformations since spring football. So this is from March, so we're talking about 4 months later that these guys have been able to transform their bodies in this sort of fashion. You did mention quarterback. Let's get to it then. Good segue, Tom. Radio pro, podcasting pro. Jordan Travis up 11 pounds. I already thought, Ira, that he looked noticeably more muscular to me in spring. Shoot, I mean, he's 6'1" and he's put on 11 pounds. I'm kind of excited to see what Jordan's going to look like in a suit. See what forget the pads. I want to see what he's going to look like in Charlotte here in a few hours when we see him.
Maybe he could be like the $1 Million Man and just have the dress shirt with the sleeves torn off.
There we go.
I think he. It's funny when we talked to Tony Tokars, the quarterbacks coach in the spring. I think he said that whatever number they had down for Jordan last fall was probably not accurate. That he wasn't as heavy as they listed him at that point, and then he did get bigger by the spring, and he certainly got bigger now. I mean, that's a big deal. I mean, it would be a big deal for a lot of quarterbacks that were slightly undersized, but even more so for Jordan Travis because of the way he plays and because he's had these injury issues. Everybody is going to be excited to see him bulked up a little bit, assuming he still maintains his quickness and elusiveness, which I think he would. I mean, it's not like he's enormous now, but hopefully he'd just be able to withstand some of the punishment better.
How much of this, Tom, do you think, obviously it's going to pay dividends in the real world that he's got 11 more pounds of mass on him, however it's distributed, whether it's muscle or fat, but just the fact that he knows, man, I'm 11 pounds bigger and stronger, how much that will just help him out, not so much his durability, but I think from a mental aspect, because we saw him last year not be able to play some games and we don't know how injured he was, but it feels like some of the messaging that was out there was maybe a little bit mental toughness needs to be worked on. So how much of this could possibly be just giving him the confidence that, hey man, I am stronger. I can make it through 12 weeks this time around.
Well, yeah, I think it's not only about the product, which is the durability that it might portend of in the regular season, but also that he's proven it to himself that he can put on this kind of weight. I mean, and how do you get there? How do you get to a place where you can put on 11 pounds between spring and fall? That means you're healthy enough to be able to work out and put in the time. And if he's had, injury issues, and certainly last year in fall camp, there was some on-off moments for both quarterbacks. If you're healthy enough to consistently be a part of the strength and conditioning program, that's already got to be good for his mentals before you even get to the place where you're talking about what it's going to look like for 12 games this season. That's a really good sign that he's had a healthy body for months on end.
Yeah, and I think the other part of it is you talked about confidence and just the mental, just how he feels about himself. I know from when my kids played sports and we were talking about gaining confidence, and one of the things one of my daughter's coaches would say was the biggest thing to getting confidence for a young athlete is strength. And if she gets stronger physically, she is going to be more confident. And I think that is across the board in sports. So if Jordan Travis has put on weight and gained strength, that's one of the things I want to ask him about today at kickoff is what are his weight room numbers? Is he putting up more weight and just feeling stronger? Would that lead to more confidence just walking around?
Yeah. Seriously, I just want him in the SEC so we can just call it media days.
Yeah, right.
Kickoff is easier, but it just doesn't feel as natural. It doesn't flow off the tongue the same way media days.
And you feel like you have to explain what it is.
Yeah, ACC kickoff. And when you Google like when is ACC kickoff, because you want to know when this day comes around, it talks to you about like the first game of the ACC football season, which is like no, I'm not talking about that. I want to know when this event in July is actually happening.
And I think in basketball has always been Operation Basketball.
Yeah.
It's like, man, just
What?
It's not tip-off.
yeah. I mean, it's just.
Jim Phillips should kick a ball through the ballroom to start the proceedings, and that way is
It's
literally
kickoff.
the ACC kickoff.
This is stuff we're not going to have to worry about when we're in the SEC, guys.
Oh, soon enough, hopefully. The other two guys, just real quickly, Fabian Lovett up 12 pounds. We'll get to speak to him later on today, hopefully, as well. He's up to 318. That's fierce. And then what are we going to do with my guy, Leonard Warner? Ira, he lost 14 pounds. He's down to 247. I thought he was going to be kind of like a poor man's Kier and help set the edge, but I don't know, 247? Is my guy trying to be an edge rusher now? Going to get after the quarterback?
He has been a yo-yo, man. It's like, I'm a linebacker. No, I'm a defensive end. No. I mean, at
hybrid.
You started wondering if he was going to be a defensive tackle at some point. He, especially being injured last year, definitely had to work himself back into shape. But, it'll be curious to see. We're still trying to figure out exactly how they're going to use these defensive ends because, we've had the conversation, is Jared Verse a definite starter? Is Derek McClendon a definite starter? Is Dennis Briggs a definite starter? And then where does Leonard Warner match up? Because we think he might be in that top 5 or 6 defensive ends. So I don't know if there's one side he's got to be on or if they're going to be interchangeable.
Yeah, I think just looking at his height too, that he's going to carry that weight okay, 247. If he was like 6'6" or 6'7", you'd say, I don't know if he's an edge setter at this point. Like Dennis Briggs, for example, not much movement in the weight department. That was one player I was interested to see if there was a genuine amount, a surge of difference in what he's done. But at 6'4", that's fine. 247, I think, is within range. You can play either defensive end position.
As long as it's good weight, right?
As long as it is good weight, yeah. And that's what we'll see. This time next week, we'll know it for sure.
All right, as we chug along on Interstate 77 towards Charlotte, our destination will be posted up for the next 2 days at ACC Kickoff. Florida State goes, what was it, 10:45, Tom? 10:15? They'll be at the ballroom?
I was the one who sent that itinerary, and I didn't memorize it. Sounds about
right. I didn't mean to call you out like that. I just figured that you got a sharper mind than I do, and you would know that.
It's mid-morning.
10:45, yeah.
There we go. Watch out for this tire in the middle of the road. Look at this.
Yeah, and there were motorcycles that passed by.
The degree of difficulty for Ira Schofel right now, everybody, having to deal with my blubbering, shrapnel debris in the middle of the road, driving with these crazy roads on South Carolina. I don't know what's going to happen in the next 2 days. I'm not expecting that we're going to get some sort of big aha moment, Ira. But obviously, will we get any sort of clarity of, messaging or a path forward for the ACC, or are we just going to see a really top-notch filibuster from Jim Phillips when he's up at the podium later on this morning?
I do think there's going to be some quality filibustering from Jim Phillips. But I also think, he's going to preach the message of, security and solidarity in the sense of, the strength of this conference and the strength of the grant of rights, and try to spin it. I think he's going to try to spin it as we have a luxury in this conference that some of these other conferences don't have. Some of the Big 12, the Pac-12, they don't know who's coming or going. We know that we've got some strength in this grant of rights. Now, the looks on the faces of maybe some of the ADs and coaches around the room might speak differently, but I think that's what his message is going to be, because I think that's been his message to the member schools is like, yeah, we're not making the money you want to make right now, but take some solace in the fact that, we do have that security. And then I do think behind closed doors, the conversations are probably, we've been reading reports from Pete Thamel at ESPN and some other people about them exploring the idea of unbalanced revenue sharing and changing the way they do business, which could appeal to a school like Florida State and certainly would to Clemson, but we don't know how they are going to measure that and how quickly it could result. But there's no doubt behind the scenes, I think he's trying to do things to appease some of the schools that are nervous about the ACC's future. But I think in front of the room of reporters, I think he's going to try to present a face of solidarity and strength when everyone knows that it's a little shaky right now for the ACC.
That's that. Do you think he really believes that, though? I understand security and stability, but what is the security and stability when you know you're making far less in revenue? I mean, I know you mentioned the fact that he obviously has to bring that up, but I mean, can he really believe that? Like, hey, we've got this grant of rights, we're rock solid, we know we're going to be, us 14 will stick together, but when you're, it's like saying you're going to run back a team that won 38 games in the NBA last. He's like, all right, yeah, we're gonna bring everybody back, but we really didn't compete for a title. So what's like the upshot?
I came to 6 or 7 of these in a row when John Swafford told us the TV deal was right around the corner. So that went on for like 7 years. So I think you could probably string it out. The reality is he's going to say what he's going to say. It's not like we can tell us the truth,
right.
And so I think it's. I think that's his only option. I mean, he knows what the ACC is being looked at as right now, and he knows what, the concerns he's hearing from the member schools, because there's no doubt that the ADs and presidents at all of these schools are complaining to him, and he's got to figure out a way to either improve their revenue situation or look to bring in other schools. But I think, his only option is to present strength, whether or not he has it or not.
What would you do if you were Jim Phillips' chief of staff, Tom? Like when he wakes up Wednesday, would you have to pull him to the side and give him like a pep talk and be like, man, you got this. Just be confident. You're the face of the conference. I mean, what are you expecting to see? What are some of the questions you're hoping that we'll get answers to on Wednesday from the State of the Union, if you will, from the ACC Commission?
I don't know. From a Florida State perspective, you're going to get many answers at all that you want. Maybe they'll float out the idea in a public forum on the record about distributing funds unequally, and that would be appealing to schools like Florida State, Clemson, and their fans' ears. But I don't know if you want to do that, because obviously you've got other member institutions that are arriving that don't want to hear about revenue sharing that's not equal across the conference. So he's got to be careful in that regard. I would think if you're a proper chief of staff, you've already gone through ad nauseum what the responses are going to be and in what sequence the words are going to come, and see if you can string this thing out for 4 or 5 minutes per answer to questions. And also, I would probably direct that dude who sits at the front of the ballroom to ask a couple of questions before opening it up to the media body. And sometimes they do that for the coaches and the players, where they have a couple of built-in canned questions. I would certainly do that during the commissioner's forum and then just see how long he can go for.
I just had this vision of like a corner man. Somebody's like a corner man's giving him like smelling salts in the. You got this, champ. Just last one more round. You can do it, champ. 3 more minutes. You can get there.
Associate commissioner of the Big Ten in 5 years, buddy. Come on, just get through it right now. You can do this. You got connections back home.
All right, well then let's spin it to Florida State then. Fabian Lovett, Jamie Robinson, Jordan Travis will be alongside Mike Norvell as representatives for Florida State at kickoff. What are some of the questions you want to ask these guys when we get to them, whether they'll be up there at the ballroom or the breakout rooms, Tom, that you think, I guess other than this body composition stuff that we talked about, which is obviously something that's pretty important and pressing right at this point?
Sure, a little bit of it is, for the general stuff that they're asked, I want to lay back in the cut and see how confidently they speak about this season. What kind of aura do they give off about confidence for where the team is going to go? Players aren't always the best barometer, but sometimes you can sense an inherent confidence, a quiet confidence. I want to see if that's there for them. Just an interesting question I want to see is, how has NIL changed their collegiate existence? We were talking about it last year. There was the collective, and De'Aaron King and Mackenzie Milton were fielding questions about it this time last year because they were partnering together in an NIL collective, and they were trying to be on the entrepreneurial end of the spectrum. But now that it's here, and maybe it's helped retain one of these guys to come back for another season or help entice him to return to Florida State and Jamie Robinson, I just want to know if these guys will open up a little bit about that and how their day-to-day life is different, because they are one of the rare few. 10 years from now, you won't have this opportunity to talk to kids who know what life was like before proper NIL and what life is like after NIL.
Speaking of NIL, saw on Tuesday that Texas Tech University has created a collective called the Matador Club IRA. Apparently, something like 100 football players are going to get $25,000, 85 scholarship, 15 walk-on. As a head football coach, can you point that out and be like, we see what's going on across the country. Other schools are giving stipends to their teams in excess of, $20,000. We need to be competitive to maybe rally your troops, or do you not want to get caught in that fray if you're a head coach? Or do you kind of have to maybe do a little sort of fundraising, if you will, from the podium?
I mean, we've seen some coaches already doing that. Obviously, the Nick Saban, his comments when he called out Jimbo Fisher and Jackson State for paying players to come to their school, that he was kind of trying to encourage his own boosters to step up in that regard. We also saw, my guy at Ohio State saying it was going to cost, it was $13 million
just to keep my guys happy,
just to keep the roster. So there's a chance of that. I don't think Mike Norvell will be one of those people. I think maybe among your more confident coaches, Dabo. Although Dabo, has been kind of going into it, was kind of the anti-NIL spokesperson. Now I think he's probably realizing he has to embrace it to some degree. You might see it. You might see some comments along those ways, but I think Pat Narduzzi, it'll be interesting to see if he says anything, because in the spring, when we had the ACC spring meetings over at Amelia Island, that was right when Jordan Addison had gone in the portal, and there were all the rumors about how much he was going to be getting if he went to USC or other schools, and Narduzzi would not talk about it at the time, but now he's going to be sitting there in a room full of reporters, where he can't just walk by us. So that'll be he'll be somebody to listen to. I think in to Tom's point, I think you're going to hear a lot of anecdotes from players about things that they were offered. I wouldn't be surprised if even some of these Florida State guys that you mentioned, Fabian Levitt and Jamie Robinson, and there's a possibility, even Jordan Travis, that maybe other schools flirted with them, because Mike Norvell said he had at least a couple players who had opportunities to go other schools that were presented to them. So there could I'll be surprised if we don't get some anecdotes like that tomorrow, whether it's from the Florida State guys or other guys.
Speaking of disarming questions, or maybe a little bit of an environment that provides the opportunity to get some more forthright answers, can we ask Mike Norvell about injuries? Can we maybe ask about a Winston Wright and get something, you think?
I think we'll definitely ask whether or not we get anything. I mean, the last time you asked him about it, I think was probably the spring game or right before it, and I think he said, he's on track. He's making progress, and I think that's the same thing he's going to say. But we definitely need to ask him.
I think we'll get something more, Tom. Call me optimistic, call me crazy. I think in this environment, I know he does not like talking about injuries. I don't like asking him questions that he doesn't like answering and making him feel awkward, but sometimes, you want to get an answer to this thing. I don't know, call me crazy. I think we're going to get some sort of insight into Winston Wright's health, hopefully.
Well, some of the whispers around it, and Ira, you talked about this on panels or Sunday Smash on our channel, YouTube TV, Warchant TV, the whispers are positive, and maybe if the question is framed that way, that,
is he ahead of schedule?
It seems like, things are moving okay, especially from his social media. It seems like he feels pretty confident about being able to participate and play this season. Has your expectation level changed from April to now? And maybe he'll bite. But I'm with you, Aslan. I think, you might get a more gregarious Mike Norvell this year, because he's got to feel a lot better about the team that he's going to roll out on the 27th against Duquesne and the subsequent 11 games than he did last year. There's fewer questions for him. And that's a group that finished 5-3 last year, and it seems like they've got most of the guys they want culturally speaking. So he might be in a good mood and willing to offer up a little bit more.
Let's go back to, you were talking about confidence. That was a good point, Tom. I mean, looking at this team and seeing what kind of poise they have and how they carry themselves, I thought it was really interesting. I think we try to tap into our inner Irish O'Fell and judge body language last year when we saw Mackenzie Milton and Jordan Travis along with Jermaine Johnson at kickoff last year. And it felt like there was a sort of like an ease to Mackenzie Milton that we didn't necessarily see from Jordan Travis. And that could have been for a multitude of reasons. Maybe a lot of it, obviously, Mackenzie being older and being in the spotlight a little bit more so than Jordan ever had been. I don't know. I'm kind of curious to see how Jordan's going to carry himself, because, I mean, he has to know now, without a shadow of a doubt, this is his team. I'm kind of curious to see how he's going to react. I mean, do you think will we see maybe a change in his demeanor? Do you expect him to kind of continue to be a guy that, talks about team first and want to talk about his teammates and point out their growth more so than his own?
I think he's still going to be that kind of player, because that's how he talks in general, even when he's been on the top of the world.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's going to be what he talks about. But I think we were right when we saw that last year. I think Tom made a big point of it, and I think it was accurate. And I think we saw it during the first month of the season. I felt like Jordan felt the weight of Mackenzie Milton.
The shadow was cast over it.
Yeah, it was just there. It was like ever present, and I felt like Jordan felt like he couldn't step outside of that, because I think he knew that everybody kind of wanted to see Mackenzie Milton, the story, obviously what he had done on the field before, but then also, just the story coming back from the injury. And I think Jordan probably felt like there's a a lot of desire for Mackenzie Milton to win the job. And then I think we saw that in the first month of the season. But then when he got the job, when Jordan got the job and they started having success and the team rallied around him, I thought his confidence was completely different in practices and in games the second half of the season. And I'd like to see, and I think we saw it in the spring, and I think you'd like to see the continuation of that. So, that's 100%. That's one of the things I probably plan to write about tomorrow is, does Jordan give off that aura now that he's a guy, not just another player on the team?
I mean, 6'1", 211. He'll be standing tall, walking tall. What do you think, Tom? I mean, I don't know. I personally don't think I saw the kind of growth I want to see out of him on the field as a quarterback operating this spring. But maybe some added weight gives him some confidence, and then maybe crazy enough, maybe it's not a workout, maybe it's not a film session, maybe it is an event like this where you're being poked and prodded and asked all sorts of questions that maybe you don't want to answer for the better part of an hour and going from room to room. I mean, maybe there's some sort of growth opportunity here for Jordan Travis. I mean, do you think that maybe we'll be able to see some sort of insight into just how maybe confident and his ceiling possibly could have changed for this upcoming year?
Yeah, because this is a huge year for him. Even though it's not his last year of eligibility, this is a massive season for his career moving forward. So I think he knows the gravity of that. And like Ira was saying about spring practice, you could just see the way he carried himself. It wasn't necessarily about rah-rah leadership, but just the way he carried himself through drills. You could tell he owned it. That this was his particular offense, his team, and this is his season. And I'll bet you it'll be night and day from last year, because I remember the breakout earlier on for the local media that we had. I wish I had a picture of it. But Mackenzie had the scrum around him. Jordan's was already done. He was sitting in a chair in one of the smaller ballrooms they have, conference rooms. And he was staring up at the scrum that Mackenzie was dealing with that was 3 deep. He had kind of a smile on his face. He was kind of in awe of what was happening. And he was just watching the Mackenzie Milton media machine being born in this beat. It already existed in Orlando. This is now his. I think he knows what that looks like through watching Mackenzie, so he knows what to expect tomorrow. I hope he actually has a little bit more of a terse exchange every once in a while too, or maybe he doesn't like a question. Just it shows that he's willing to be more than just maybe what a member of the PR staff would want him to be propped up to be. Have a little personality to him. I'm looking forward to see if he has a little bit of that tomorrow, because it's not always about the positive. Sometimes it could just be about taking command of a conversation and redirecting it if you want it to go somewhere else.
Yes, sir.
Well punctuated, Ira. All right, we made about 25 minutes of good, substantive football talk, but we got to get to the realignment portion. Should we get in touch with like a local, I don't know, body shop, car shop, tune-up shop, realignment, tires? I mean, like, get some sort of realignment segment on the JCS, Wake Up, Sunday Smash. I mean,
that is a fantastic tie-in. You have a media career in front of you in a different ilk. If you want advertising dollars, Aslan, that's a perfect idea.
If you need a realignment.
Yeah, shoot. Get a hold of Jim Phillips or, us at whatever, Tuffy Car Exchange, whatever they are. But I don't think we're going to hear any kind of, bombshell sort of thing. But who knows? Did George Klavikov think he was going to go on 4th of July holiday with his family and then hear his phone buzz and say that Southern Cal and UCLA were going to abscond to the Big Ten? So who knows? We can wish. Will there be a buzz, you think, in terms of, us media folks? We have big mouths. I mean, do you think that's going to be the general water cooler talk? There's a cafeteria where we all can go down 3 times a day and get a square meal. I mean, will that be the central focus of this 48-hour sort of bonanza and blitz in Charlotte?
It'll definitely be a big part of it, those conversations, because it was last year. Last year, I think on the first day we got there, Texas and Oklahoma joined the SEC, and you could feel it in the air that, okay, what does this mean for the ACC? Clearly now the ACC is not on the same par with the SEC. They're at a different level. And here we go now a year later where the Big Ten just threw their blank on the table and made their statement about what they are as a league. And the ACC is still sitting here and still with Notre Dame as a halftime partner. And, I think it's I think that it's going to be the conversation from everybody. But what I do think is going to be interesting, and just because the sense I've gotten it from listening to some of these podcasts in North Carolina and Virginia and read some of the writings from sports writers who are really well connected at schools throughout the ACC footprint, inside North Carolina and outside North Carolina, is you can tell there's a legitimate dissatisfaction and concern from those schools that in the past seem to be pretty comfortable staying with the ACC and sticking the course, and hey, maybe when this ACC network gets off the ground, that's going to close the revenue gap, and the future's still bright. You're seeing a lot more concern out of those schools. So I want to spend more time talking to some of those reporters who cover those programs to get a better feel from what they're hearing on the ground, because I have a feeling that there's a lot of the consternation we know has been existent in the Florida State athletic department and program for a long time. I think it's spreading to some of those other schools, and that tells me a lot, because I really don't think, I think the ACC can stick together for a while, but if 6 or 8 of the schools want to get out, it's going to make it much harder.
And that, my friends, is where this podcast ends. But a reminder, we are now in Charlotte as I record this. We, being myself, Irish O'Fell, and Tom Lang, we're going to have you covered front to back, up and down, every which way from ACC Kickoff. 9:30 in the morning, Jim Phillips, the ACC commissioner, will have a State of the Union address of sorts for about an hour. 9:30 to 10:30, he's slotted to speak to the assembled media at the West End in Charlotte. We'll have the replay available for you on Warchant TV. We'll have a sort of breakdown of the comments available on the warchant.com tribal council. After that, Mike Norvell takes the podium, and then the players. Then they'll go to another room where they'll individually be speaking to assembled masses of media once more, and then after that, they'll speak to the local media. So we'll be speaking to these guys, asking all the questions we possibly can. All the coverage you could possibly want will be at warchant.com as well as Warchant TV. Hit the thumbs up. I think we deserved it. Maybe a 5-star review, if not for anything else, the simple fact that Ira and Tom were on this show. We'll have you covered. Again, Corey, recovering and recuperating from gallbladder surgery, says he's okay, he's doing well. We should have him end of the week to hear his thoughts on ACC Kickoff, which he'll be watching from the comfort of home. So everything's all good. Thanks for listening and watching if you're on YouTube. Stay connected. Jeff Cameron Show also 1 to 3 o'clock, and we'll see you later.